Hello and welcome to The Pledge. Police have warned England fans travelling to Russia next month for the World Cup not to display the St George's flag, as it risks being seen as imperialistic and antagonistic. Never one to miss out on the chance to demonstrate those two particular qualities. I thought you might need this, Nick.
Ah, fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Come on, England!
Oh, come on, England, there we go.
On the show this week, Majid says fatherhood could have unexpected benefits. Phil doesn't want to be scared of a knock at the door. Nick puts his hand up for grammar schools, and Rachel backs Stormy. But first, it's me. This weekend, Prince Harry will marry Meghan Markle in a wedding that's going to be a first for the royal family. I'm not talking about Meghan's racial heritage, her nationality, or her religious education. I'm talking about the fact she's a feminist. It's one of the many things young women and men I've been speaking to find inspiring about her. Alongside, of course, the fact that she's built her own career based on talent, becoming a successful actor in Suits, she's used her visibility as a platform for activism and has pursued her passions in a lifestyle blog. In short, she's exactly the kind of woman so many others aspire to be. I say has. The reality is, since announcing her engagement, Meghan stopped doing every one of those things. Early, alarming indications are that she's preparing to be a traditional royal wife, performing charity, not activism, losing so much of the individuality that made her special. That would be so out of sync with what people want, and it would just be wrong.
I agree with much of what you say, but you say traditional royal wife. Well, have we seen so far a traditional royal wedding? Not in the least. I mean, the evidence is that you're worried that she's going to be crushed by the firm and that she's going to be sort of silenced. I'm not sure. I mean, I think everything's up for grabs right now. I have no idea what's going to happen on Saturday.
Well,
I mean,
are you talking about the chaos of the run-up to the wedding?
I'm talking about the cluster shambles of the royal wedding prep that we've seen and the failure of all the palaces to get a grip on the fact that the Markles are freelancing all over the shop. But let's leave that aside. You're right. She's the last thing that Meghan Markle said was women need to have a voice. They have to be empowered to use them. Since she said that, we have heard nothing. Now, it remains to be seen whether she will hit the ground running and be an advocate and an activist for all the charities that she's espoused so brilliantly in her career to date, or whether she will just be a fast breeder, a royal baby machine, as a royal baby every minute, you know, when the Middletons are around. I just think it's too soon to tell. Honestly, I feel that we're in really uncertain waters.
But I guess it's
she's
a question
changing the game.
I think we have an idea of what kind of person she is from what she's done in the past. But the question for me is, will the palace, will the monarchy be with it enough to recognise that allowing her to be herself would be an asset for them? I just want to show you what one royal biographer thinks about her potential impact.
With Meghan, we've got someone who is mixed race, who's a career woman, who's a divorcee, who's American, who comes from a broken home. These are all... I mean, she's more representative of our society today than the blonde daughter of an aristocrat ever could be.
And you can see more of that on Harry and Meghan, A Love Story, which is on Sky News now.
OK.
You're
I'm very glad you played that in, because it completely destroys your argument, the reasons that we went through, that she's been married before, that she's mixed race, whatever it might be. I mean, we are talking about the British royal family, are we? Because it just doesn't resonate with me at all. Let me show you a picture of Her Majesty the Queen.
What doesn't resonate with you?
Were you saying that these traditional royal wives, and they sort of stand back and they don't pursue feminism? Can I take you back to before you were even thought of, probably before your father was thought of, the 1940s? Here's Her Majesty the Queen, as, of course, Princess Elizabeth, as a truck mechanic.
She wasn't a royal wife.
I think that's a land... Hold on a second. It speaks to what she did. So you can put that in your truck and smoke it. And at the same time, you talk about Princess Diana. You said about...
That ended well.
Hold on. Not taking up certain causes. She was the first person to make physical contact with someone who had AIDS.
I know.
She went into those mines. She took on a load of unfashionable causes, completely completely opposed.
Let me ask you something. Do you think,
you're just talking nonsense.
think for somebody like Meghan Markle to look at Princess Diana, that is an attractive model as to what you will experience?
Her charity work, yes.
No, listen, I grew up watching Diana performing those. Yes, and she paid the price. That's what we all saw.
For her charity
she paid
work?
the price for trying to break the mould of being a traditional royal wife.
Why?
You can't deny that, Nick.
No, it wasn't about trying to break her. She was just miserably unhappy in her marriage.
Rachel,
I think we're missing a point here, a massive point here.
Well, before you
Harry's
carry on-
obviously happy,
Well,
all right?
can we hear Meghan?
He's done
Can we-
extremely well for himself, all right? He's brought what he's brought to the table. The Queen's bending over backwards to accommodate, even paying for it, and turning up when she didn't turn up to Charles's gaff when he was getting married because he was remarried with
She didn't go
Camilla.
to St George's Chapel for Charles and Camilla. Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure she didn't.
No, I don't think she did.
No, she didn't go. No,
I
she
wasn't
didn't.
watching that
So
one.
she declined that offer on the back of her position in the
Because
church.
it was a divorce
So she
thing,
is
yeah.
absolutely
Meghan's
busting.
divorced.
She's busting a gut to accommodate this
Values have
marriage.
changed.
Okay. And I wish them all the very best of luck.
Oh, so
everything they do. And I'm 100% behind it. All right. And I'll raise a glass to them now.
By the way, while
Absolutely.
we're speaking about feminism and women's voices, let's hear what Meghan has to say for herself about herself, shall we?
You got that in. Well done.
Right.
I think what's been really exciting as we talk about the transition of this out of my career but into the role is that, as you said, the causes that have been very important to me I can focus even more energy on, because very early out of the gate I think you realize once you have access or a voice that people are willing to listen to, with that comes a lot of responsibility, which I take seriously. And at the same time, I think in these beginning few months and now being boots on the ground in the UK, I'm excited to just really get to know more about the different communities here, smaller organizations who are working on the same causes that I've always been passionate about under this umbrella.
Well, I didn't see Harry say anything right there.
That is why I worry about
He was
her.
quiet.
Look at her energy and her enthusiasm.
Right.
She's going into
I
an
tell you what I'm more worried
institution that
about.
is terrifying.
I
But
tell you
she
what I'm
knows that.
more
she?
worried about. So, having beaten Harry and Meghan to being in a mixed-race relationship with an American.
You're not going to take her down the aisle, are you?
No. I got there first. But what I'm really worried about is that people make her race the subject of conversation, and it isn't just what we typically know of in terms of racism. She is simultaneously too white for people that insist that she isn't authentically black, and too black for others who are worried that the royal family is somehow being hijacked by some foreign invasion. Let me quote to you Professor Andrews from Birmingham University, who is teaching Britain's first black studies course, and he's called her a token. And I think, actually, I was surprised that you went down this line when actually I would have thought that you were...
I'm not worried about the
Yeah, hold on.
colour
You've
of
just
the
said
skin.
that people focus too much on her heritage.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about heritage, I'm talking about her feminism, and now you're bringing it back to her
Well,
heritage.
I'm criticising those who are doing so, and I think that whether it's Dr. Andrews is saying that she's basically a token and is there simply to act as window dressing.
I think that's unfair. I know Gihinde, and I don't think that's a fair representation of what he's saying.
I'll quote you what he said. He
he's
said, when you
talking-
have symbols that make it look like things have changed and we celebrate it, that does more damage than it could ever do good.
That's not a criticism of Meghan Markle. That
Georgia
is a criticism
Chambers-
of the fact that racism in the UK is not a problem that will be solved
Hold on
by
a
a
minute.
royal wedding.
Hold on a minute.
He's not
Hold on a
casting any
minute.
judgment on her.
Why are you defending this? I don't believe it. I don't understand why you're defending this. No one should be called a token simply for existing.
He's not
Georgia
calling
Chambers
her
has
a
said,
token.
she's a journalist, he said, he did use the word tokens, Georgia Chambers said she could pass as white. And I'm just astounded that people that talk about equality, when finally we achieve a symbol of precisely what Nick said and we saw in that video, a symbol of modern Britain, they want to drag it down, they want to pull it down and complain.
All right, if you're dragging it down, I'm going to lift you back up. Have a look at
Thank
this.
you.
This is another African-American woman who is marrying a white British man this Saturday, expressing her feelings about the royal wedding.
But I think what Meghan brings to the table is a little bit different. Is the element of it's going to be an international wedding, it's an interracial wedding. She's quite open about and very proud about the fact that she's a mixed race. I think that only is going to be beneficial because I'm in an interracial relationship, and bringing that to the foreground and to the mainstream is only going to hopefully have a positive impact. And I think she's handled it with elegance and grace.
That's lovely.
I think a lot of people are focusing on the positive of this. I think for many reasons people relate to Meghan. We have the highest rate of interracial relationships in the Western world. There are many people looking at that couple who can personally relate. She's a woman that I think young women aspire to be, passionate and energetic.
Why is this bloke dragging her down?
This guy. Why are we focusing on that? The question is, the more important question is not what Gahinde Andrews says, but whether the monarchy are ready to let a young woman like Meghan come in and thrive and not crush her individuality. And I really hope that they are.
I think they're already doing so. The Queen, like I say, has backed down to stuff. She's accommodating it. She's paying for it. All right. Now, we all know that things move on in time, and I think that they realise now that these are the people that are taking the royal family forward, and so we've got to roll with these people that are doing it for us now. And so I don't believe that she'll be dragged into any sort of debacle.
I think it's all about partly what Meghan wants. If she's going into this, she's ended her career on American TV, where she was starring in the top-rated show, Suits. Maybe she regards this as the greatest part she will ever play, and this is the one she actually wants to do. And the other thing we have to look at is if the royal households don't want to have another failed royal marriage on their hands, they have got to let Meghan be Meghan, and they have got to allow her some self-determination in what she does from Saturday onwards.
I think the signs are already there that that's going to happen.
I tell you, I met her in Canada a week before this was announced, and we shared a panel together, and I said, sorry, so what do you do? And she said, oh, I'm in some TV programme called Suits. I said, what's that?
Did you say, I'm in one too?
I had no idea what I was talking to. Anyway, we've got to move on.
Very impressive, Majid. Always with the news. Majid Nawaz, ladies and gentlemen. Fantastic work.
Completely missed it there, didn't I? Didn't even ask for a number. Look, from one impressive insight to another fascinating insight, researchers have found that male criminals between the ages of 15 and 20 who had a son and not a daughter committed 25% fewer repeat crimes. Having a son apparently prompted a greater sense of responsibility than having a girl. Don't look at me like that. It's just the research, all right? A father may assume his son is more likely to imitate his criminality and so tries harder to be a better role model. That's the explanation, right? The effect of one father committing fewer crimes also led to a drop in offences committed by the rest of his peer group. These results led UCL professor Christian Dussman to declare crime is a social phenomenon and contagious. Assuming this, investing in crime reduction measures would have knock-on benefits that far outgrow their primary effects alone. If improving societal conditions and trusting ex-convicts with some responsibility can help to rehabilitate young offenders, isn't this where our policy focus should be? If you're left in any doubt, remember that reoffenders are more likely to keep reoffending. Just one criminal lifetime can inflict spiralling pressure on our justice system and impact multiple victims. Is that a cost worth risking?
OK, first of all, I see where he did some of his research, and it was in Denmark, which is hardly the criminal capital of the world, is it? The other is quite a nice place, in fact. So I come from quite a broken home. I was adopted.
A criminal background.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm going to allude to that in a minute. I have had a colourful past. Yeah. I've strayed off the way more than once. OK, and family has been important to me to rehabilitate. Responsibility has been even more important to rehabilitate myself. Once I had my son, OK, and I gave him a role model. He's become an officer within the military, and he's done very well. Only a few little problems I have with him, but nothing to speak of. Yeah. So I understand, and I fully appreciate that.
Did you feel different when you had a son?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But where I believe that we do fall down is that the punishment doesn't ever seem to fit the crime in this country, and we're not actually harsh enough on people either once they're incarcerated. I think they have it far too easy. And, although I appreciate, when they come out, they need to be rehabilitated, and family plays a massive part in that, and responsibility plays a massive part in that. Also part of this, rehabilitating people, that they need some sort of deterrent in the first place to stop them getting in trouble and not just rely on what they're going to get afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, the prisons are overcrowded, though, aren't they? And if you look at
they are overcrowded.
If you look at the rates of self-harm in jail, I was surprised to learn that it's almost double the rate of inflicting harm on other people. So you've got prisoners that are incredibly depressed in prison, in overcrowded jails, costing us, especially for young offenders, which is what we're talking about, up to £80,000 per year per prisoner. So, if you're going to extend those sentences, you're going to extend that cost, you're going to increase the likelihood of their mental health deteriorating. I think perhaps if you look at alternative ways to make sure people aren't offending in the first place or reoffending. So, for example, this contagion aspect of these statistics. If just one father has a son and thereby is, sort of reduces the chances of that one father's reoffending by 25%, his entire peer group are less likely to reoffend. And that actually deals with your problem, because then they're not committing crime in the first place.
Just to put some figures to this, 67% of jails were overcrowded. Phil, as you were saying, you talk about self-harm incidents. There were over 41,000 compared to some 10 years ago, an increase of nearly 80%. When you think that's nearly 10,000 a week. Now, come back to your central point. OK, so, and I hear what Phil says, and that's very interesting. How does the government get... Are you suggesting the government should sort of encourage potential male offenders to have children?
No, because they're under 20.
Right. So
I've got a suggestion.
I think just very quickly, it's about giving responsibility, trust and responsibility. So
in what way?
So, for example, one of my friends... Well, because people that leave prison find it difficult to get work, for example. One of my friends had a restaurant. It was in Borough Market, and he initiated this scheme of hiring people that have come out of prison in his kitchens. Right. Of course, there's a vetting involved in this, making sure. But it's, I think, giving responsibility and trust. And I think that's what this indicates when you have a son. They feel more responsible. So other ways of making them feel responsible, standing on their own 2 feet, so they can provide for their families, I think may go a long way in helping to reduce reoffending rates.
My suggestion is, so there are 200,000 children in Britain who are affected by the incarceration of a parent, mainly fathers. So many of those children cannot visit their fathers in prison because we move prisoners around the country arbitrarily, often hundreds, even thousands of miles away from their home. It makes it so difficult to keep families intact. It is not a priority, if you ask anyone in the Ministry of Justice. Keeping a family together, making it possible for a child to continue to have a relationship for parents. It's just not, it's not a priority.
Phil wants prison to be tougher.
I know.
I do want prison to be tougher as a deterrent.
You know, it's so interesting. There's a cultural dimension here, because if you research back to the 18th century, you'll find that there is this idea in Britain about punishment needing to be harsh. And even in the prisons then, which we now would regard as abominable, there was always this idea that they're not tough enough, they're not tough enough. Other countries are more interested in how you can rehabilitate people rather than how you can punish them. But we culturally have this attachment to the idea of punishment. It's not working. 28% of adult prisoners and 40% of young offenders are reoffending when they come out. That is not good for any of us.
And, you know,
we are suffering because we're failing to rehabilitate. And can I just quickly show... This is Peter Dawson from the Prison Reform Trust talking about the problem.
Now, we have a choice as a country. We can continue with prisons in shocking condition and expect them to get worse. We can pay for it. But at the moment, the Ministry of Justice is looking at huge cuts in its budget, not more money. Or we can start to use prison less. And that basically means looking again at the length of sentences for serious crime, which have gone up hugely by about 50% in the last decade.
It's not working, and the statistics bear that out.
Rachel.
Well, we do have a rate on reoffending, which we're going to see on screen, which is, I think, 29.4% of prisoners come out of prison and reoffend, which reinforces the message, which prison isn't working. But I was very confused by your...
I disagree. There's still 71% that are not reoffending.
I know, but the prisons
That's still
are
a good
wildly...
figure, isn't it?
It's
all right, isn't it?
We've got... The number of people in prisons has risen to over 80,000.
And that's what I was saying about the punishment fitting the crime. Let's have a look at what we give custodial sentences for.
Just on a correction here, actually, for young offenders, it's 41.6%.
The reoffending rate.
Reoffending, which is the subject of the conversation here.
And a lot of these young men have children. A lot of them do. And can I just give you one more statistic?
Rachel wanted to finish what she was saying.
Just because it's relevant, very quickly. 65% of boys whose father is in prison go on to offend. So 65% of people in Phil's son's position would reoffend.
All this takes us in one direction, which is that, you know, families need fathers and fathers need to have sons, especially if they're not going to go down the... Of course it's not. And I think it's very hard to say that the government has got to step in and keep families together when families fracture themselves.
How would you have prisons?
If the people... Well... And also, why isn't Phil,
the reason there's no glass anymore in the middle.
I'd have people within striking distance who've been able to visit their family. That's just common sense, you know what I mean? But I would have prison as a deterrent, as something you do.
But have you been in a prison, Phil?
You're going to jail.
Can we just... I think the viewer will be wondering, why does Phil thinks... The viewer... One viewer will be wondering, why don't you think, Phil, do you have personal experience of why you say prison is not tough enough?
It's because people are reoffending at such an alarming rate.
And you
They're
think
not
that's 'cause
bothered. They're not.
prison's
I
not
see young
tough?
lads, okay, I've seen, and I've come across young lads in youth clubs and various things that I've worked around, okay, who are not bothered by going to prison for a couple of months. They just don't care. So when you say reoffending, it's usually people that have done some minor offence who've been banged up for it, where possibly community service would have helped. You know, stuff like petty theft and that sort of stuff, where they're getting banged up because they're repeat offenders. But if you put them in nick, eventually, all right, they're mixing with those people. The reoffending rate.
I think what you're saying is prison institutionalises people.
Didn't you just make the opposite argument? Then you said if minor offences and they're mixing with
Yeah.
So in other words, don't put them in prison if they're committing minor offences. Put them on community service.
And that's what. No, right. The point I'm trying to make is the punishment fitting the crime. Yeah. We're putting people in prison who shouldn't be in prison.
But for far too
you see
long.
What I mean? So the ones that deserve to go to prison, the ones that have made the major crimes, then you know the chances are they're going to go away for long sentences. By the time they get out, then you get a chance to rehabilitate them. But for the ones that have committed minor offences, let's keep them away from the prison sentence and let's give them something else to do.
All right.
Let's give them some, I don't know, some labour or some community service, something that's as equally minging to take part in and that you don't want to do, OK, but something that keeps you out of the prison system. And therefore we'll cut down the numbers in the prison. Can you see where I'm coming from?
That's where we have
I mean, it's great. I'm hearing he's changed his mind halfway through.
Yeah,
I haven't changed my mind on it, OK? Prisons need to be tough as a deterrent, but the punishment needs to fit the crime. So some of the people in prison don't deserve to be there.
So you're saying fewer people should go to prison, but the ones who do should have a harder time. I mean, one of the issues is overcrowding because we put people who shouldn't be in prison there. And as a result as well, you've got 23 hours a day in the cell for so many prisoners because there just isn't the staff or the facilities for them
23 hours in a cell with a PlayStation, a television, you know, and 3 meals a day.
What the state can do in response to your question is, for example, family visits. So, sorry to bring another fact into this, I mean, but 52% reoffend if they're not seeing their family, as opposed to 70% who reoffend if they, if they aren't seeing their family, other way around. So it increases the chances of reoffending if you don't have family visits. So I think there are certain things that are within the remit of the state.
But there has to be some punishment.
Of course. Of course,
your liberty's been taken away. That is a punishment.
So let me grab hold of the bull by the horns again and let me give it a good shake and push this forward in a different direction with people that probably shouldn't be inside, all right? OK. Our troops, deployed and governed by the people we choose to rule our country, do a tremendous and courageous job. They work in sometimes appalling conditions, for long hours, and make split-second life or death decisions. Northern Ireland is one example of an extremely difficult task, up against an enemy too cowardly to meet us head-on, who tried to hide in the shadows, sometimes even holding women and children hostage whilst other family members were instructed to drive bombs at soldiers so that they could blow them up. But it's the soldiers who were working to strict rules of engagement who face investigations, whilst the hoods of the back streets are handed out letters of comfort. In a time where our leader of the opposition appears to be reluctant to denounce certain terrorist groups or even sing the national anthem, what hope have our veterans got? And what effect will it have on our serving soldiers who at the back of their minds will be thinking what could happen instead of what they should be doing when things turn noisy? Personally, I should sooner be judged by 12 than carried by 6.
You won't hear a word of argument over what you've just said from me. I wholly agree. Before we get into the debate, we should probably see what the Prime Minister said about this in a PMQ, Prime Minister's Questions, earlier this month.
We have an unfair situation at the moment. The situation we have at the moment is that the only people being investigated for things that happened in the part of these issues that happened in the past are those in our armed forces or those who served in law enforcement in Northern Ireland. That is patently unfair. Terrorists are not being investigated. Terrorists should be investigated, and that is what the government wants to see.
And I think, again, Phil, you're going to sign up to that. It's worth pointing out that that was on the 9th of May, and to the best of my knowledge, we haven't moved that any further forward. I just have to read a response from Sinn Féin, and it goes as follows. These remarks are deeply insensitive to the loss and pain of hundreds of families who've been bereaved by the British state forces. They've caused deep hurt and offence, could even undermine confidence in the rule of law and the administration of justice. They are also demonstrably untrue, as has been evidenced by official statistics and statements on legacy investigations. So says Sinn Féin Vice President Michelle O'Neill.
Can I come straight back at Sinn Féin with a photograph of myself?
Of course you can.
All right, let's stick this photograph up. Right, there's me as a young, fresh-faced soldier in Northern Ireland, about 19 years old, I believe, OK? 19 years old and packed full of all this information of what I should and shouldn't do, OK? 19 years old. Right, let's stick the other one up, all right?
Right.
OK? I was stood next to that when that went pop, all right?
Right.
Now, it's only for the buffoonery of the people that laid the bomb that I wasn't killed, because they put it in the second floor of the pub and not the bottom floor of the pub, or else Land Rover, myself, team, interpreter, dog, umpteen of us would have gone flying across the road. That's attempted murder. And that's the sort of thing they're trying to bring... The soldier that they are doing is getting done for attempted murder, or they're trying to... That's attempted murder. No, we knew who did that. We know who did that, OK? We're not stupid, all right? And they're not...
I sense I'm not opposing you at all. And by the way, seeing that earlier picture of you, we certainly know where all the pies went. But if we now, if we now come back, there is something called the military covenant, by which blokes like you and women go forth and you put your lives on the line for the defence of this country and you carry out orders. We then should look after you. We are not fulfilling the military covenant. We're not fulfilling it with actions like this. And also a story in the papers today that they're now needing money from Help for Heroes to back up some NHS treatment because there isn't enough money in the kitty to look after returning service personnel. That is wrong, and this is wrong, and the investigations have to... But you would agree, lastly, before I yield, if a serving soldier had committed a crime, he, or possibly she, does need to be investigated.
Yeah, 100%,
along with
100%. Okay. If they've done wrong, and it's been
along
proven
with the
that they've done wrong...
terrorists.
But don't forget, we kept all our evidence, we logged everything we did in Northern Ireland, and we stacked it all up. So it would have been looked at before. The IRA or the other terrorist organisations did everything they could to get rid of any evidence and destroy every shred.
So I'm a bit confused, because are they suggesting that there should be a statute of limitations on investigating terrorists and
Who,
not...
they being Sinn Féin?
Yeah.
No, Sinn Féin are saying the opposite. They're saying that all the security forces' deaths in the province should be continue to be investigated and not the soldiers held to account.
Because that's confusing, because from what I'm seeing, 70% of the killings have actually been by terrorists.
Can I
I mean, look at the Birmingham. Look at the Birmingham bomb.
Including
their families can't even get
we need to finish on the statute of limitations because
this
is the issue that Phil says there should be a statute of limitations. These soldiers were doing carrying out the instructions of the state. They should not be investigated for murder. Anyway, it's all 40 years ago, and it's gone... Anyway,
the guys that made these decisions to pull the trigger, and I have pulled the trigger in anger myself, and you don't get the privilege of sitting in a high-backed leather chair, OK, and 2 days to make that decision. You get a hair's breadth,
And former Defence Secretary Sir Michael Fallon completely agrees with you. So can we just hear what he said, which is, this will not be just a witch hunt, but a one-sided witch hunt.
Absolutely.
IRA units did not keep records, as you say, or operate within regular command structures. There should be a clear distinction between our troops who were doing their duty to the state and risking their lives to protect others, and the terrorists who were happy to blow up or maim entirely innocent civilians, Protestant and Catholic alike.
So we never went out the gate looking to kill people. We went out the gate looking to protect people. They went out of their gate looking to kill people, and that's the difference.
Can I just bring some context in? So this whole thing is about, there's an inquiry. It's a public inquiry, so people's views are being sought about whether there should be a statute of limitations, which would mean that people who are serving in the British Army would not... Basically, it would be an amnesty. They would not be able to be prosecuted. And the reason I'm confused is because for Theresa May to say, and Michael Fallon to say this is one-sided, it just doesn't bear up when you look at the facts. So this is all about whether there should be a new historical investigations unit into these legacy crimes. There currently is already a historic inquiry team. They have been investigating more than 1,600 cases. The vast majority are Republican killings. The vast majority. Only 500 are loyalist killings.
And do you want those investigated,
double
Phil?
are the Republicans. So why
is
she saying...
I want a line drawing in the sand, and I want people to move forward with this whole thing.
And here's another statistic for you that I've got to show you. Of the legacy work that the police service of Northern Ireland are currently investigating, only 1/3 are killings by the army. The rest are Republicans and loyalist paramilitary.
Can I ask a question? Back to my question. Phil, can I ask you a question?
I know you're not, but it's not fair,
so
because we heard what Theresa May said, and
I'm
not interested in what...
Let's hear what John Taggart has to say. He's a victim from both sides of this, and then I'll ask a question.
My father, who's murdered by the army, and my brother, who's murdered by the IRA. I would feel that, from my perspective, that I would want exactly the same for both. I would feel that each of them needs to be investigated thoroughly the same way, and that's what I've campaigned for.
So when I heard that, I did a double take, because I had to listen carefully again to ask the question. This man actually lost his father to the army, our army, and his brother to the IRA. So I suppose he wants justice. And my question is, who is it, because I'm yet to discover this, who is it that's suggesting that justice should only be one-sided? and that our troops should be prosecuted and not the
IRA, as
Who's
part of
suggesting
the
that?
Good Friday Agreement, were given these letters of comfort.
Right.
They were told they don't need to be on the run anymore. They're OK. They're under the radar. They won't be investigated anymore.
But so were our troops. Both have been received.
We weren't, no. And
our troops have
we're
been told,
being brought up again.
Our troops have been told that their cases are closed.
All these investigations are dragging this all up again.
So who's brought it up again that only one side will be prosecuted? I'm not sure I understand
Investigated and possibly
Yeah,
prosecuted.
yeah. Who's saying...
Both sides are being investigated, but there's a suggestion that
Be
now
realistic.
the British Army should not be.
Afua.
Do you know which countries in the world have an
Please,
amnesty
please,
like this?
Listen for 1 second. From the safety of a TV studio in West London, we can say that, right? Whereas his mates, they can check probably to the minute what they did. They logged him in. You honestly think you're going to be able to track down terrorists the same? This will be so one-sided.
OK, so your argument is that that's against the...
It's all very
well. If it's good for them, it's good for us. Let's just draw a line in the sand and let's all move forward.
Right.
You know, is what I'd like to personally see.
So are you saying, so I understand you, are you saying that because of Nick's point, because the records are meticulous for the soldiers and the IRA terrorists didn't keep records, it will institutionally discriminate against soldiers?
That's one point to the argument.
That's why they're investigations. They're not just looking at these...
They're not investigations, they're
We've
witch
just
hunts.
heard from someone who's experienced 2 people in his family having been killed.
Okay.
Why is one victim more
Where are we going to
important
start
than
the
another
investigation
victim?
for that Land Rover
But
that we've just
why-
seen? No, seriously, where are we going to start the investigation for the blown-up
You've missed the whole
Land
premise
Rover?
of this argument, which is that the soldiers who are in Northern Ireland were doing what they were told to do by our government.
That's one of the things that would be being investigated.
Okay, and the terrorists were coming out the door and actively trying to kill people and break the law.
That's
okay?
why...
I wasn't trying to break the law when I walked around Northern Ireland with a gun. I was trying to hold the peace, and I was acting under the stringent regulation of the yellow card and the orders from my officers and superiors above me, OK? So why should I, even if I had done something that was deemed wrong, why should I be facing prosecution 40 years down the line? It's ridiculous, Afua. Come on, please.
Because we live in a society that has rule of law, and the only countries that have an amnesty for these kind of killings are Argentina, Chile and Zimbabwe.
What about another model?
That is not the kind of country we are.
What about what the Defence Committee recommended in 2017, which was a statute of limitations coupled with a truth recovery mechanism to help bereaved families? In other words, a truth and reconciliation committee that doesn't involve prosecuting soldiers. I mean,
that has merit.
That's an official suggestion, and it strikes me as not the only country. South Africa had that model, and of course we all applauded Nelson Mandela when he cooperated with that model. So perhaps we could, help the bereaved families like John Taggart, who's lost people on both sides of this conflict, while not going after people like you that served our country.
You're watching The Pledge on Sky News. Up next, it's me, and I'm giving the Department of Education full marks. If you or any of your children are currently taking them, you'll need little schooling in this conversation. We're in the midst of the GCSE and A-level exam season, and for students and parents alike, you have both my sympathy and respect. Mum, Dad, go easy with them just this time. Keeping in the spirit of said exams, try this one. If a particular type of school, and that's grammar for those of you at the back of the class, appears beloved by parents and pupils, but derided as unfair, unduly selective and disastrous to those who fail to meet a set level of attainment, should it have been entitled to pick up 50 million quid from the taxpayer to fund expansion? Discuss.
This is really interesting to me, Nick, because I went both to comprehensive school and to grammar school, and I've experienced both systems. In fact, the comprehensive school I went to was so bad it was eventually put under special measures and then taken over by new management.
Is that because you were in it?
I think my presence had something to do with it. After my comprehensive school, I went to further education college, got expelled, and then on my mother's insistence, taught my way into this grammar school for which I didn't really have the grades, but the headmaster...
You talked your way into it?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's no surprise I ended up on this panel. But the headmaster, Mr. Baker, like me, took a liking to me and let me in. And I can honestly say they were the best educational years of my life and turned my life around. I wouldn't have got the A-level grades I got if not for that two years in grammar school studying A-levels, and I probably wouldn't have ended up at university. One teacher in particular, I should say two, because it was one class in particular. My economics A-level class had two teachers, and they talent spotted me and actually predicted me an A for economics. I got the A, and it was the first A I'd ever been predicted for an academic subject.
What would have happened if you stayed in your comp, do you imagine?
I would have been, yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't have gone to university. I think. So this economics teacher said, when he said to me, you're going to get an A, I was literally shocked. And I said, what happened was I didn't want to let him down. So I studied really hard and got the A in economics that he predicted me. In fact, I got exactly what I was predicted. That teacher later went on to become the headmaster. He's now the headmaster of the same school. Oh, yeah. So I've had this really interesting experience. I know a lot of people worry about whether middle-class parents have an advantage because they prepare their kids because they can afford private tuition. Yeah. I failed the 11+. My parents couldn't afford private tuition, and I got in this rather unorthodox way. So the only caveat I'd make is, as long as these grammar schools are catering for people that can't afford the private tuition and thereby can't afford to advantage their children in that way, currently the stats are that 2.6% of kids in grammar schools are eligible for free school meals.
Very little,
as opposed to 13.4% in state schools. If that gap can be redressed, then I would wholeheartedly back this. And I think that may require some form of special approach to kids from more disadvantaged backgrounds. That grammar schools, currently only a minority of them are considering this, but I think that Theresa May's proposals need to be caveated in that way.
That's a very fair point.
Yeah.
I agree with everything Majid said, and also 50 million is not...
No,
it's pretty much a drop in the ocean when you look at the entire education budget, which I won't go because it will be another statistic. What I heard Madge say, which is really, it's not necessarily about whether you're a state or a grammar or a private or a comprehensive or a Catholic or a boarding or a faith school or whatever. It's about good teaching and finding a rapport with a good teacher.
Can I name them?
Is it not?
Yeah, you did. You said Mr. Baker.
No, the guy that predicted me a name, Mr. Moth, and
you see, this
Mr.
is what
Skelly.
it's about.
Hats off to
so
those
much
two.
more than the sort of school you're in.
Is it not also about recognising talent in kids? I mean,
yes,
I got a cycle proficiency, all right, and that was I took that twice.
That's a teacher.
Oh, mate, he done well. He excelled with me. But you know what I mean? But it's about recognising talent in kids.
Yeah.
But you need to be an empathetic teacher who likes kids, who wants them to succeed for that to happen.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Let's get in grammar schools. Come back to the point is really... I hear what you say about teachers, of course. Afua.
I find this topic tricky because I'm really passionate about anything that can improve the quality of education for kids in state schools. And, you know, I'm a parent. We all want our child to go to school where they will have teachers that care about them, where they will be in classes where they get enough attention. The reality is that's not happening in so many state schools, and it is really unfair. And I have never experienced grammar school. I hear another generation talk about them mythically as this way that the state system gave kids that. And it sounds wonderful, but I have these concerns that they will be hijacked by middle-class parents. And at the moment, Majid mentioned the free school meal statistic. There's also the fact that, OK, so there's 163 grammar schools. I've got the stats today. I don't know why. There are 163 grammar schools educating 167,000 pupils, but they only take in 3.6% of pupils with special educational needs, compared to 11% nationally.
Well, they
and
must maybe be forced to look at the lower-income groups and the SEN groups.
And the concern with grammar schools is always, it's amazing to create a really high-quality education for kids who are gifted and able, but what about everybody else? Do they get dumped in?
I'm all up for kids that are able, being pushed forward. Right, sport is a particular good example of this, OK? Man United don't care where they get their kids from. I could have played for England, but I was rubbish. So I never, do you know what I mean? I never got picked for these sporting academies and all that sort of stuff. Right. And a grammar school, I see it as an academy for people that can and will achieve eventually, OK? Yes. I don't believe the door should be... The door should be shut to anybody. Yeah. And I believe that even if the person on the lowest income in the school, if they've got the noggin, they should get the knock on the door and they should go as well.
Before I bring Rachel back in, address Madge's point, which is... Probably I could, well, my children now past age, I can afford to get special tuition. That's not necessarily fair on other people in my street who can't.
There is always a certain element of that is life to a certain extent. But if a child excels in a school and there's an opportunity to go somewhere, as he's been talent spotted, OK, and go and do that, and that'll be recognised by the exams and the SATs and all the other stuff that he does. If he's recognised as doing well, snap him up, get him in there.
What about your story, Majid, though? Because Majid was clearly a clever, gifted kid, but it wasn't spotted at the 11th class.
You gave me Mr. Clever in the Mr.
And if you hadn't been able to talk the hind legs off a donkey, you never would have been able to get into it.
Listen, Angela Rayner MP wants to back your point up. Let's hear what she has to say.
We know that grammar schools do not help all children get on in life and do well. They only help the privileged few. We want an education service in Labour that makes sure that every child has those opportunities, and it's really unfortunate at a time where we're having real-term cuts to our schools that the government have chosen just to give a lifeline to those privileged few.
Now, to your point, Phil, I think that's a really good analogy with sports, because actually even in the comprehensive school I was in that was eventually put under special measures, as I said, they had a streaming system. So even in the comp school, they streamline and they select the kids they know are going to be able to pass to higher grades and put them in what they call the grammar stream in a comprehensive school. So I think the key thing here is making sure that we are scouting for talent, whether it's in sports or in academics. It's about finding the talent and promoting it.
Rachel.
Well, I mean, we heard from Angela Rayner. We must hear now from Damien Hines, who's the Education Secretary. It's not just... It's about actual... They both seem to agree that we need more good schools and more availability of places at good schools. Let's hear what he says.
We need more good school places, and those can be in new voluntary aided schools. It could be in one of the new wave of free schools, but also it should be possible for selective schools to expand as it is possible for those others. It's about where the parental demand is, where the need is, and to make sure there is an excellent education available nearby.
You see, as somebody who benefited from really the best education money can buy, I am not going to sit here and say that you shouldn't expand grammar schools to enable others less fortunate and privileged than I was to benefit from a good education.
Did your parents get the money back when they asked, by the way? Right, you've talked about your level of education, as have you. It's time to play the pledge top of the form. So who can identify? This grammar school boy went on to study business at LSE, but dropped out... Mick Jagger is absolutely right.
That was quick.
This next one, it was head girl of her grammar school where the motto was...
Theresa May.
Wrong.
Thatcher.
Right. Margaret Thatcher's Stephen and Grantham Girls' School.
Okay.
This grammar school boy studied natural sciences at Cambridge University and is now a television broadcasting legend. Pledgers?
Attenborough?
I was going to say, it looks like Boris Johnson, shadow.
It's not Boris Johnson, it is Sir David Attenborough. You're absolutely right. Wiggerston Grammar School in Leicester. And we close with this grammar school girl was the first black woman to be elected to that...
It's got to be Abbott, isn't it? It's got to be Abbott.
Absolutely right.
Can we do a test on a bicycle?
I'll give you A+.
Top of the class.
I'll give you A+. A+.
Coming up after the break, why a storm could be coming for the old school feminists. For my money, Stormy Daniels is the defining heroine of the Me Too era. She's the porn star suing the president. And if she can prove he used campaign finances to shut her up, she could bring him down. Unlikely, but possible. Beyond that, she's got my vote because she doesn't do shame. She never plays the victim. You can't bully me, she says. She also, by the by, never gives the milk away for free. Copyright Meghan Markle's mum, Doria Ragland. And if you want to enter Stormy Daniels' site, no pun intended, you have to pay for the privilege. So much to admire here. Contender for the Nobel Peace Prize or even the next president of the United States. Whatever. She's a feminist icon for our times.
Ah, Rachel, there's never a dull moment when you're on the show.
I think she's trolling us.
I can't believe it.
Well, first of all,
it's 4 against 1
I just want to point out.
I
just want to point out that it's not necessarily a Me Too situation because she never alleged.
No,
that...
I said for the Me Too era. I didn't say she was in a Me Too
just
situation.
In case,
she's very much not.
Yes,
saying
she never
she's
claimed that there was any
Too.
unwanted sexual attention.
No,
it was
allegedly
a consensual situation. I mean, power to her. Power to her. If she brings down the presidency, I'll be a bigger fan.
She's not going to bring down the presidency.
No, you know what?
Do you
know what?
Let Afra finish and I have something to say on that.
In preparation for this, I was going to kind of write down here on my notes a list of all of the other women who've made sexual allegations against Trump. I couldn't be bothered because there are so many of them. And if you look at this, it is unbelievable. First of all, they denied that anything had happened. They denied that she'd received a payment. Then they said it was her lawyer and they knew nothing about it. Now Trump's admitted that he reimbursed his lawyer for the payment. Imagine if any one of these things had happened to Obama, he would have been gone. He would have been gone.
But so we've got to...
Well, I don't know about that.
Just anyway, on Stormy, I mean, she's not my role model, Rachel, because...
Why?
I don't know, porn's not my thing.
Well, no,
but you know what?
but you know,
I'm good. I'm
girls
big on
gotta
no
make
shame.
rent. Girls
I'm big
gotta
on
make
no
rent.
shame. She does her thing. It's not just even she's been in movies. she's getting bumped up to #1 on the Pornhub statistics
every time she does a
Trump story.
That brings me in. Sorry, I'm going to play my trump card. The reason I sense, let's look at this as Stormy Daniels searches, courtesy of Pornhub.com. January 14, alleged affair with Donald Trump, up 514%. January 31, appears on Jimmy Kimmel Live, up 258%. February 13, Trump's lawyers, you were saying, admits to paying hush money, up 259%. March 7, she says she's to sue Donald Trump, up 489%.
Yeah,
and lastly, March 25th, interviewed on 60 Minutes.
The question is, she's not doing this for the money.
Nick's done meticulous research on this
She's not doing this for the money.
I don't understand.
Can I say something?
No, I need to say something, which is why this matters. Can we just remember why this matters in the timeline? Stormy Daniels was given $130,000 hush money very soon before the election, 10 days before Comey, the CIA director, brought up the matter of Hillary's tweets again, and very soon after, the Hollywood Live, or whatever it was, that website, had the secret tapes of Trump saying, you grab them by the you-know-what. So this was she was a clear and active danger to the Trump presidency at this point, and she was bought off, allegedly.
Right, so
this is why this matters, and he may have to answer questions about this in court before the midterms.
I tell you what, nothing's going to happen. This is, forgive the pun, a storm in a teacup.
Stormy in a teacup.
It is indeed. And actually,
in a teacup.
Before I get to my point, to your point, presidents generally don't get impeached for stuff like this. That's my point. So when you said, far worse, if this had happened to Obama,
Bill Clinton almost got impeached
for
having non-sexual relations with that woman in the...
What I'm going to say is, I think, first of all, I think Trump's going to serve 2 terms, and I'll tell you why he's going to serve 2 terms, because we keep falling for the trap, which is what? He knows how to play the media, which is precisely, I'd allege, what Stormy Daniels knows how to do. They know how to...
It's one of the best Twitter feeds out there at the moment.
They've got 5 of Britain's biggest brains sitting here on the pledge panel, the most popular TV show in the country, talking about it, right? And so, of course, it's free PR for Stormy Daniels, it's free PR for Pornhub, and it's free PR for Trump.
This is the point
That's what's going on. That's what's going on.
Do all right at this. He's going to lose a few of the blue rints.
All the Trump voters, they're going to respect him even more.
He swings around about here, isn't it?
By the way, I agree with you that Stormy isn't playing a victim. I like that about her.
Yeah, that's
and actually,
point.
I think that's great. But let's not pretend she's not playing the money game here. Let's not pretend that she's not.
I think her
motives aren't feminist. Her motives are money and PR.
Yeah, but listen, there's a very
she
serious
risked
allegation.
everything. Every time she called him out and said they had a consensual affair and she was trying to sign it, he could have taken her, he could put her in prison for that. She's brave, she's fearless, she's taking Trump on his own terms. Can we see her on Saturday night?
How could he have put her in prison?
For breaking the terms of her NDA. You can go to prison for less.
Allegation.
Look, there she is on Saturday Night Live with, obviously, Alec Baldwin playing Trump, on the right, I should say.
Yeah. There's a very serious allegation.
This is a dough generator, isn't it? Come on.
There is a serious allegation that she's been threatened and intimidated and her child, a threat made against her child. So it's not an easy thing to do, to go up against the President of the United States. And also, I mean, we've heard the Pornhub statistics, which Nick so meticulously researched. It doesn't cast any aspersion on her that people are more interested in her every time she makes what she would say is a valid allegation.
By the way, the White House spokeswoman, Sarah Sanders, has said, of course she would say this, the President has denied and continues to deny the underlying claim.
And he also denied the payment.
Yeah, that's the right of reply there.
Until Giuliani outed him by mistake.
But, you know,
the whole thing is...
It remains to be seen. I agree with you partly that I don't think it's going to shift the dial, but I stand by my point is that the way she hits back on Twitter, let's have a look at one of her tweets. She smashes it every time. You know, she will not have people saying that she can't have a voice because she's a porn star. You know, she's absolutely playing this. I think she's playing a blinder.
I'll tell you what, though, I agree with you that actually if she's able to destigmatise people that work in the sex industry...
Oh, I don't think that's her intention.
No, I know. I don't think feminism is her intention either. But as a knock-on consequence, if that happens,
I think it's purely she's doing a cracking job of making a pile of dough. Her Twitter feed's gone up. Everything else around her's gone up. There'll be T-shirts, there'll be caps, there'll be the whole shooting match.
As Nick knows, when he looks into the stats...
Stormy, do you know what I mean? Would it really have an effect on what happens to the big man? I don't think so.
She wanted to run for office, and I think Louisiana, which is her state, and she had to give up because she said that no one would take her seriously as a politician.
I said possible president.
Which I think that's what needs to change. Why can't you be a porn star and a politician?
Yeah, I mean, that's an unintended...
politics more
if that's an unintended consequence of her work, that's great. But I don't think her intentions are anything but grabbing the attention, making money, and good on her for that.
Nobody's saying that Trump should be impeached for having an affair after Melania had given birth 4 months ago before to Barron. What it remains true, and you as a lawyer should support me on this, that if...
Are you a lawyer?
Of course.
Oh, OK,
if
cool.
Trump and Michael Cohen paid Stormy Daniels to buy her silence during this pending, very active campaign period, that is a federal crime. Now, he has to account for that, and it could be Stormy Daniels who inadvertently, or actually very deliberately, brings him down on this point.
If they
insisted that he paid for them to keep quiet, that's revenge porn, surely.
Right, now, before we go, we've just got time for a bit of Hollywood glitz and glamour. And just a warning that the next bit of video does contain some flash photography. This week sees the great and the good walk the red carpet at the Cannes Film Festival. But one celebrity decided the festival's controversial dress code that says women have to wear high heels was a step too far. Seemingly at protest at the footwear rule, actress and jury member Kristen Stewart kicked off her black Louboutin stilettos in front of photographers and climbed the stairs barefoot, thus proving that Cannes' strict shoe policy is once again the festival's Achilles heel. Kristen Stewart, you are our straight walker of the week. So who's wearing high heels here, boys? What do you got on?
Only on a Saturday for me.
I'm actually wearing flats today.
And she's in flats.
My ankles are... I tell you what, my ankles are chilly because I've got no socks on.
Oh, you never wear socks.
Ghastly, pouting actors and actresses who are merely paid to say other people's words. Just shut up, get in front of the camera.
Come on.
I've just been hurting a
They can't tell women.
I'll tell you something funny. That time I met Megan in Canada, she was there too. And all the attention was on her, and no one knew that we were about to meet our next princess.
And also Julian Assange was there. That should have been a clue.
That's enough of our Hollywood princess for this week, and that's all we've got time for. But if you want to join in the debate, just search for The Pledge on Facebook or Twitter. Thanks for watching.